Hi, welcome to this episode of Cooking with Mom. So, we're going to make, what are we making today? Pie crust, okay? So, the recipe I use comes from my mother's old Joy of Cooking cookbook, and it's a really simple recipe. It calls for 2 cups of flour, so there's 2 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 cup of water, and 2/3 cup of shortening. Shortening is another word for butter. And you'll notice on every stick of butter, there are convenient measurements. That's 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons, and then it tells you right here that 8 tablespoons is 1/2 cup, but you need 2/3 of a cup. And then it tells you that 5 1/3 tablespoons equals 1/3 cup, so that means 10 2/3 tablespoons equals 2/3 cup. So you cut the butter right here to get the right amount, okay? So, we need a dish. Let's get out a dish. I'll just use this dish. All right? Okay, so you start by putting the flour and the salt without dumping the salt all over the counter into the bowl and mixing them together. I need a fork to mix with. I'll just use this. So you mix the flour and the salt together. Now here's the thing that makes this recipe really unusual. I've never seen another recipe tell you to do this. You take 1/3 cup of this mixture and you take it out. All right, and set it aside. Now you take the butter and it's probably good to cut it into pieces before you put it in. So let me...
Is the butter at room temperature or?
Butter should be cold, even frozen, but it makes it even harder, but definitely cold. You don't want warm butter. I'm going to cut it up into small pieces. And you don't have to use butter. You can use margarine, you can use shortening or Crisco, you can use lard. There are some people who have used I have used oil when I've run out of butter, but butter does a pretty good job. The best thing is lard, but I know vegetarians don't eat lard. And then with a knife or a fork, you have to do the hardest part. This part is a pain in the butt, but you have to basically smush the butter in there. And this takes the elbow grease, but I want you to do a close-up here. You basically want to smush that butter in like that. They say you can do this with a knife too. I'll use a fork. Let's try it with a knife. I'll try it with a butter knife. You can also just cut through it like this, but you basically have to smush it in until it's all these little granular pieces, and that takes a little while. So I'm going to tell my cameraman to stop. So it's really going to take you about 5 or 10 minutes to do this, to really get it right. But you want every single piece of butter to be smushed. And they say it should look like peas. You don't want any big globs of butter. And this is the part of making pie crust that's really hard. It's not hard, it's just time consuming. Because it's really easy to say, I'm done. And this is a part that, you can do with a Cuisinart. But this is the old-fashioned way. So I'm going to call that done. Okay, so now you do, I keep seeing a few more little things that I want to smush out of there. So now you do the really unusual part. You take the 1/4 cup of water and you mix it with that 1/3 cup of flour and salt, and you mix that together and it makes a flour paste. See that goopy flour paste? Oh, and I forgot to say in the beginning that you should use all-purpose flour, or if you really want to be fancy, they say pastry flour makes the best pie crust. I never buy pastry flour, but I think you can't go wrong with pastry flour. So now you take this gloopy stuff and you mix it in with your other mixture. Get it all out of there. And you mix it all together. You can use your hands. I'm just gonna sort of go like that at first. And that goopy flour paste, now I'm gonna use my hands. That goopy flour paste is gonna make it all stick together. You can go like that. And it's not gonna be wet. It's going to be very sort of dry, but keep pushing it together. And it will eventually all stick together. You know what? I'm going to add like a few more drops of water here because it seems like it needs a few more drops of water. Literally just a few drops. Get those last little pieces together. Goopy stuff out of here. Yeah, so basically you form it into a ball like that. And then the next part is to chill it. And I may put another couple drops of water in there just to make it stick together a little bit more. I really want to find the cookbook and see if it called for a 1/4 cup of water, but maybe you need just a little bit more than a 1/4 cup. I'm going to put a few more drops in there, just literally a couple more drops. Okay, so now I'm going to put it in the fridge and chill it. I'm going to put it on a piece of saran wrap.
And how long are you going to chill it for?
Oh, at least an hour. So while I'm letting the crust cool, I get the apples ready, and I use my peeler, corer, slicer. And I know you don't have one of those, but I think you know how to peel and slice apples. So most recipes call for 3/4 cup of sugar. I never put that much sugar in. I'm just going to put 1/2 cup of sugar in, and I'm gonna mix the cinnamon. I actually never really measure, but I'm gonna put a little bit of nutmeg, like a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, and about 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon in. But I'm gonna mix them in with the sugar, so they don't all clump up when they hit the apples. Like that. So pour all the apples. Oh, and by the way, I used the dish, the same dish that I used to mix the crust for the apples, because all it has in it is a little flour, so you don't want to dirty 2 dishes. And then they say actually just mix them with your hands. It's the best way. Sort of coat all the apples. And if you have a dish that has a top on it, you can just put the top on it and shake them around. But so those are pretty much ready to go in the pie now. If you have a little lemon juice, you could squirt some lemon juice on them. I always use a mixture of different kinds of apples. Macintoshes get really mushy when you bake them, but that's really yummy if you mix them with like some Granny Smiths or some Cortlands that stay a little firmer. Okay, but those apples are ready to go in the pie. And now I'm gonna get the crust out of the fridge and roll it out. Okay, so I've taken the dough, the pie crust out of the fridge, and now I'm ready to roll it out. And so I take it out of the saran wrap. I'm gonna cut it in half. And I'm gonna put the other half back in the fridge until I'm ready to roll that out. I actually stuck it in the freezer for a few minutes to make it nice to chill it faster. So I just put it back in the freezer. Now, when I made this, I was a little concerned it might be a little bit too crumbly, but what you do is you have to have a smooth surface, or you can use a cutting board. I actually have a pastry mat. Pastry mat's good if you have one. Put just a little bit of flour on it so it doesn't stick, but you don't want to put too much flour on it. Oh, I need and there's the rolling pin. And then you sort of make it like round, and you roll it out. And this seems a little bit crumbly, but it seems to be holding together okay. Oh, you know, the other thing is
flour
put a little,
on your rolling pin, yeah.
Yeah, gotta put a little flour on your rolling pin. I have a stone rolling pin that doesn't really need flour. But oh, if you're using a bottle to roll it out, put the bottle in the freezer before you roll it, and it won't stick as much. You roll it out. Let's stop the video. So to see if it's the right size, set the pie plate down on top of it. Yeah, I think I'm gonna roll it a little bit more. You're just sort of doing it by eye. It's not an exact thing. Okay. I think that should be good. I'm gonna scrape off this stuff. So the one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to roll it too much, because that makes it kind of not so great. And then I'm go under the pie crust like this, so it's not stuck. You could fold it in half, or you can just very quickly go like that. Now it looks like it still is a little bit too small. So I could just stretch it out a little. I think I'm gonna put it back and roll it out a little bit more. But I'm gonna put a little dab of flour down before I do that. Notice how it really doesn't stick when you put a little flour on the roller. There we go. Okay. So, gonna set it in there. Take a little piece here and add it over here. Make sure it doesn't like stick to the pie plate. And now I've got my apples all ready. I'm just gonna pour them right in. Now, looks like I didn't mix them that well, but that's okay. We'll get that stuff out now. In, mix it with the sugar. There you go. Now some people put a pat of butter on the pie before they put it in the oven, and I don't see why you need butter in a pie. Of course, Chris would be one of the people who puts butter in, but I don't.
Of course you do.
Yes. No, I don't.
I do.
Yes, of course you do. Of course you do. There we go. All right, now I get the second crust out. And do the same thing. Make it round. Don't want to overwork it. Oh, I had a few little pieces over here that I was going to put back in. Now this part is a little crumblier, so I'm just going to take a couple drops of water. Make it stick together a little better. I'm hoping that rolling it out will sort of fix all that. But yeah, so this looks like this is the crumblier part of the crust. Oh, and I forgot to put flour on the. Put a few drops. Okay, I hope this works. So I think going back, thinking about when I made the crust, maybe I should have put a little bit more water in it. But I think it's gonna be okay though.
That's a large margin for error.
Yeah. All right, and then do the same kind of thing. You eyeball it. I think it needs to be rolled out a little bit more. So, same thing as before. sticking. There we go. So now you've got some imperfections here, but you're gonna fix it by just, what I do is I just wet my fingers. I'm gonna cut this off. Cut off the pieces that are sticking way out. Okay, and then I wet my fingers and I just squeeze together all around the edges. Stop and wet my fingers some more. Oh, actually, can you turn the oven back on to 425? You can show that on the camera. So we're going to put it in an oven that's 425. All right, and then I always make an X in the middle, 4 little slots here, and then I poke it with a fork a bunch of times to let the steam escape. And you notice there are definitely imperfections here, like this is a little crumbly right there, but it doesn't matter because it's all going to bubble up and just be so delicious. And oh, and I have some extra pieces, just gonna stick those in. I sort of make sure it's not really stuck to the crust, to the pie plate, because it'll be hard to serve it if it is. Yeah, I'm gonna make this a little prettier right there. Yeah, just kind of ruining it, aren't I? All right, and now I'm gonna just wipe off the bottom of it. So now I'm gonna put it in the oven at 425. So we'll just wait till it gets to 425. Okay, so now I'm gonna put the pie in a 425 degree oven. And it says to bake it at 425 and then to lower for 15 minutes and then to lower the temperature to 375. So what I usually do is I put it in at 425 and then I turn the temperature down to 375. Or sometimes I do it at 350, but anyways, I just looked in a cookbook, it said 375. So that'll basically mean it'll cook at 425 and then it'll go down to 375. And I'm gonna put on the timer for 45 minutes. I'll put the timer on for 50 minutes and I'll check it and I'll see if it needs a little more time at that point. So let's check the pie. It says it has about 8 minutes left. Ooh, it's looking good, but I don't see it like bubbling. So, although I can hear it starting to bubble. So the buzzer's about to ring. Let's just take a look at that pie again. Oh, it's bubbling nicely. It's turning, wait a minute. It's turning brown around the edges. Oh, I think it's gonna, boy, I almost dropped the phone in the oven there. I think it's gonna be ready to take out when that buzzer rings. So my cameraman went to take a nap, so I've set up the camera here, and the buzzer's about to ring. And, ooh, looks like it's bubbling nicely. Ooh, look at that. I don't know if you can see it, but all the juices are, it looks like a perfect pie. See, it's kind of sizzling and the juices are coming up right there. See how it's sizzling. I think this pie is done. So we're gonna let it cool down and we're gonna eat it later. I'll let you know how it tastes.